Hi friends, welcome to the Hill of Roses, where we come once again to celebrate the best works of the social left and debate the policy positions of the movement we create together. In this episode, we'll be settling the debate on what economic tool can better establish an economic floor. A UBI proposal similar to what Andrew Yang has proposed with his freedom dividend, or a federal full jobs guarantee, similar to proposals that Bernie Sanders has designed in his current 2020 election platform. Before we get into the history and efficacy of each of these proposals, as well as the final answer to this question, let's first explore reasons why there is a need for an economic floor, and how egregious our current levels of economic inequality have reached. So, the reason why economic inequality, beyond the ethical reasons of leaving your fellow brother and sister in the gutter so that the wealthy can, trickle down upon us all, it is that it's plainly bad for the economy too. The reason why it's so bad is it's really simple. It is due to a term called marginal propensity to consume. In layman's terms, it basically means how much of every dollar increase in your paycheck would one spend versus keep. It's common sense to understand that every dollar given to the poor is more likely to be spent paying off debts, paying bills, and investing in goods they have never possessed before potentially. While that same dollar given to the wealthy is, it's much more likely to be saved as they already have most goods one might normally want. They're already successful enough to not have to deal with bills, and they've probably paid off most of their debts. Most conservatives would counter by saying, John, when you give that money to the rich, they don't spend it, they invest it. And in turn, it becomes such a great return for the economy. Well, it better be at least close if they're going to say this investing is so much better. However, from a study in 2017 from Quantitative Economics, it shows that when it comes to the marginal propensity to consume, the differences are stark. Every dollar given to someone in the top 1% gets 6 cents spent, while someone in the bottom 20% spends 48 cents and 54 cents if they're unemployed as well. This is basically an 8 to 9 times rate at which they would be more likely to spend the dollar if we give it to them rather than if we give tax breaks to the wealthy because they're just going to hoard it. So, an economy is truly thriving when the amount of transactions within it increases, as any sale between two parties with full information should be an exchange of mutual benefit, as one would buy something for less than their total actualized value, and a supplier would sell it for more than it costs them to actually make it. This is basic economics. We want people to make trades because both parties should benefit. So to have a powerful economy, we must be working to increase the amount of spending we do as an economy. And as we've seen by the marginal propensities to consume, that only happens when wealth is in the hands of the poor and working class, rather than in the hands of the top 1%. Since this can be further evidenced when you actually also look at some other economic indicators like GDP growth compared to income inequality rates. Since 1980 and the election of Ronald Reagan, I know we all don't like him, But his massive tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy are truly bad beyond just not liking him. They have really been the birth of this income inequality. Since then, the top 1%'s income has risen 312%, while the middle 60% only had their income rise 46%. This, in turn, has also caused the top 1% to go from 9% of total income to 23%. Furthermore, it's not just income. Like, it'd be great if we have people rising and falling and the income is what's pushing them there, but it's not just that. It's also when you look at things like just wealth. How much do they already have in accrued? As in that same time span, it went from 23% to 41%. Luckily, there's been some counterbalances. Our welfare systems have been actually doing a pretty good job at reducing poverty over that same time span, as it's gone down from 25.3% to 14%. And so, in turn, it might make sense if we think about how can we expand the welfare state to further decrease poverty, take money from the top and be able to distribute it down so we have less income inequality and therefore a better economy because more people will have the ability to spend. UBI is one of those potential solutions. And surprisingly, it's existed for a very long time. Even since, if you think about it, our early hunter-gatherer societies in which people were simply given the benefit of being a member of the tribe or the in-group in this case. It has had perspectives from both right and left also favoring it. Classically referenced by Yang, it's Milton Friedman to Martin Luther King Jr. And luckily for us, there's also been some studies on this. When it comes to a recent test that had been going on for 2 years in a country like Finland, it had some, we'll call it mixed success, but I would call it overall good success if you change what the purpose of UBI should be. Essentially, from this study, they had seen that the people who were receiving that additional income of the UBI were reporting significantly improved mental, emotional, and even physical health. However, unlike their hopes and desires, it didn't end up causing any new economic development in job creation or in tax revenue. We also know that similar programs have even existed here in America, to a smaller extent, obviously, but we have the Alaska Permanent Fund, which is a $1,600 a year UBI from oil taxes, and it currently had a 72% approval rating in Alaska. Establishing a simple, popular welfare system that lacks social stigma due to everyone being enrolled is a good building block to establish all welfare systems on top of and reduce administration. However, when it comes down to a UBI plan, the specifics make or break everything, as it can often also be used as a tool to cause the death and reduction of the welfare state, as we've seen in consolidation processes in countries like the UK when they tried to roll out their universal credit system. This is a reason that early on in Andrew Yang's campaign, and even still today, Yang catches major flack for the funding mechanisms for his plan, in which part of it is from the savings from the elimination of existing welfare programs. It's not a full elimination, but it gets defunded from people opting out of it, and therefore it slowly erodes over time. He's clarified at this point that it doesn't include Medicare or Social Security, but that still means that his plan will force individuals that are currently receiving TANF benefits, SNAP benefits, and housing assistance to choose giving up their benefits in exchange for the freedom dividend. And so those poor people are not gaining a full net $1,000 a month, while individuals in the middle class who do not already receive these welfare benefits would. Furthermore, Andrew, although he has mentioned that the VAT tax he would impose, that funds the majority of this, would only be on luxury goods rather than basic household necessities, the lack of detail on the rates between those two classes and the items included leaves a lot of trust to be had that the compromise to achieve his UBI plan when it goes to Congress might just be sticking the cost on everyone rather than who should actually be paying it more, which is the wealthy. Additionally, it does nothing to help give those without a job a way to create value for society while assuring they've reached a baseline of an economic floor like a federal full jobs guarantee hypothetically proposes to do. Jobs programs are not unique in the United States, dating back to the New Deal era where we rebuilt our country with programs like FERA, CWA, PWA, Triple C, and the WPA. Joblessness fell in that time period from 24.9% in 1933 when it passed to the New Deal from the New Deal that it went down to 9.9% in 1941, the year before war began. And during that time, it averaged a 7.3% growth rate. Now, if you compare that to the Obama administration, who were also tasked with trying to pull our nation out of depression, during that time span, he led a drop from 9.9% to 4.7%, but he only averaged 1.6% growth rate, likely because instead of investing in a bottoms-up approach like a jobs program and social safety nets like FDR did, Obama did it through economic stimulation of corporations in the form of bailouts and subsidies. This resulted in income concentration for the top 1% decreasing 1% under FDR, but increasing 2% under Obama. It's clear. Jobs programs and investing to rebuild our nation, like the plans of FDR and now Bernie Sanders, are effective. However, historically the problem arises when we go from trying to create jobs programs to rebuild our nation to jobs guarantees. That regardless of skill and background, we can find you work to do. And the reason this has run into problems is because the government is bad at retraining people successfully. Andrew Yang always quotes it's from 0 to 15%. But if you even look at programs just like WIOA, the Work Innovation and Opportunity Act, it sports only a 28.3% success rate on 2.9 million individuals serviced. And even then, that's not like the whole goal of retraining. Sometimes it's to give skills too. They have an even worse rate, 17%. So they're bad at teaching skills, and they're not great at giving you a new job either. So if you also couple this with the fact that these jobs are going to pay a minimum wage, unless we first get this up to a living wage, even beyond the 15 that Bernie Sanders is advocating for, people are going to be basically earning starvation wages doing these jobs, and there's going to be stigma if people aren't working too. And it becomes hard to place certain individuals like the disabled or the elderly. And finally, it becomes a problem when you can't necessarily know what the future of a job is going to be. So you're going to constantly need to retrain people over and over. It's not just a one-time deal. So this debate has occurred before. It's a classic debate between a full jobs guarantee and a UBI. The last time this was really at the forefront of our political mind was in 1972. Also during a Democratic primary, this time between George McGovern and Hubert Humphrey. McGovern argued for what he called a demogrant of $1,000 a month, while Humphrey argued for a jobs guarantee. McGovern ended up winning, so feel good, Yang folks, he ended up winning, but due to attacks from Humphrey, he ended up dropping his demogrant idea, as it was only 1/3 the size of the proposal Richard Nixon was giving for a guaranteed income, which also ended up getting killed by Eugene McCarthy and in turn became the Earned Income Tax Credit. So, furthermore, the jobs programs that Nixon had also created with the Emergency Jobs Act, they also got cut and scrapped by the Ronald Reagan administration. I know, Reagan, right? So both those ideas have largely been off the table for a long time. It's been off the table since 1972, and it's only been brought up again in mainstream conversations. So this leads us to the choice of which candidate's proposal should we rally behind. Is it Andrew Yang's UBI? Is it Bernie Sanders' full federal jobs guarantee? I would first, let's sidebar for a moment, just on the topic of Sanders and Yang supporters. I think we need to find ways to become less hostile to one another, as both have platforms that are largely representative of the progressive movement. Both philosophically are trying to, be an anti-establishment candidate, and both bases on average like one another compared to the 19 other centrist and neoliberal candidates. Now, with that, it is my belief that both plans are good in principle but flawed in execution. I believe Bernie's is slightly more flawed, as I believe the guarantee itself will be a net negative, because it's going to increase cost of administration. We don't have great success rates with the actual retraining process, and there's all these difficulties we've already covered in terms of being able to predict the future of work. I believe we should be creating more jobs programs in general, but we should not be making a guarantee while also, adopting a $1,000 a month UBI, but we need to make sure that this UBI is supplemental to all existing government welfare programs, because otherwise we are going to be burdening the poor and helping the middle class. Yes, they'll net benefit a little bit, but they should be benefiting the whole amount and not having these welfare programs potentially pulled out from under them due to lower enrollment. So, with this in mind, I would also love details from Andrew Yang on how he is going to frame his VAT tax. However, I think there would be better funding mechanisms like Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax. Let's have this be a pure distribution. I don't think we should necessarily socialize all parts of our economy. We should just have an economy that knows how to correct income inequality, establish an economic floor, and allow capitalism within markets that have elasticity to them. I believe in overall platforms, Bernie Sanders' plan is better. However, it is a serious weakness of his that he opposes a UBI. I've included a great piece by Scott Santens in which he documents Bernie's history on the position. And it's kind of sad that he has reached the conclusion he has, but I'll leave you all to read that. So, thank you for watching. I think in order to unite the left lane, we're going to need to be able to embrace parts of all of these candidates' plans so that we can have an economy that is multifaceted. We need people to actually have work to do. We have a ton of work we need to do, but we also need to make sure that we're not just forcing people to become wage slaves to achieve it when we don't have sufficient minimum wage laws in place potentially. We may have jobs that get automated away, and therefore we can have lags on our economy. I think we need to give more flexibility and try and achieve both of these goals. So, what do you guys think of this solution? Let me know in the comment section below, or let me know over on Twitter at the Hill of Roses. And speaking of, Twitter, we have some nice ongoing initiatives currently. I would say the first one you guys need to participate in is Terrific Tuesday. This is a Democratic primary poll. Unlike all the other Democratic primary polls, what we're doing is we're allowing each and every one of you to grade all 24 candidates in the race now, as well as giving you real-time results so that you can see how people are aligned based on their demographics. We can see how people have alliances forming. We can see who is more stubborn and who is more willing to vote blue no matter who. Secondly, I'm going to be starting up soon. I'm still waiting for a couple more suggestions, but I may fill in the blanks myself on a new initiative kind of similar to what we've done in the past in Pod Madness, but now anti-Pod Madness. Essentially, we're seeing who's the worst of the worst in preventing us from reaching our social democracy. And finally, we are in the finals of our Senate Royale, where we have 4 choices, but really it's Elizabeth Warren versus Bernie Sanders. So make sure you guys go vote on that as well over on Twitter. Finally, if you guys liked what you heard today, what you listened to today, what you watched today, all of the above, make sure you subscribe and like the channel. It's the only way we can show that roses are growing upon our hill. So that'll do it, friends. Until next time, stay rosy.